What is happening, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back to review Death of a Unicorn, the latest movie from A24, written and directed by Alex Sharfman and starring Jenna Ortega, Paul Rudd, as well as a bunch of other great people like Will Poulter, Tia Leone, Richard E. Grant, and Anthony Carrigan. And on paper, everything about this movie should appeal to me. I like dark comedies. I like monster movies. I like everybody in the cast. I mean, they've all been incredible in so many other shows and movies. But Death of a Unicorn, at times it's kind of mildly amusing, where you'll hear the audience kind of lightly chuckling, and at other times the movie's kind of mildly annoying. But this is one of those movies where, unfortunately, nothing about it quite works. Like, the jokes just aren't quite funny enough, and the monsters look dreadful, and the special effects are just kind of terrible. And like the horror ingredients and the gore and that sort of thing, while it's outlandish and in your face, it's not like enjoyable. It's not visceral. It's not impactful. Everything about it just feels a little bit off, and that it's just, I don't know, it's missing that magic mixture that would bring it all together. So I guess because everybody in the cast has been so good in so many other shows and movies, I'm going to lay the blame at the doorstep of writer-director Alex Sharfman. This is his feature film debut as a director. He's got some other credits as a producer. Maybe he's a better producer than he is a director, but I feel like obviously comedy is a very subjective thing. Comedy, you have to kind of set the tone on the set so that everybody knows what movie you're making, so they all feel like they're in the same comedy. And at times in this movie, because there's a lot of heavy improv, and you can feel the improv where it just feels like the movie's flying off the rails and the jokes get a little clumsier, all the actors seem to be acting in a different movie. Like, they're not quite sure what the ultimate tone of this movie is going to be, because there are also times where the movie tries to be painfully sincere. And I think these are the weakest ingredients of the movie, where Paul Rudd and Jenna Ortega, Jenna Ortega's character, her mother died a long time ago, Paul Rudd's wife, and they've had a lot of tension since then. So this whole outlandish adventure movie was an opportunity for them to kind of reconnect as father and daughter. And those scenes are so like maudlin and ham-fisted and clumsy. I was like, oh, like, please stop. Can we get back to silly jokes and gore? Because even though those ingredients aren't working all that well, they're much better than the overly earnest scenes that are just trying to be so sugary sweet they just make you want to fucking vomit. But maybe before I go any further, I should just explain what the hell the plot of the story is, because some of you might not know what it is I'm talking about. So Death of a Unicorn, on IMDb it says, father-daughter duo Elliot and Ridley hit a unicorn with their car and bring it to the wilderness retreat of a mega-wealthy pharmaceutical CEO. And what I'll add to that is that the mega-wealthy pharmaceutical CEO, played by Richard E. Grant, he's dying of cancer, but he's one of those families where they've got enormous wealth, and as Jenna Ortega's character kind of explains at one point in the movie, they try to launder their morals by investing in a lot of philanthropic enterprises and that sort of thing, so they don't feel guilty about making all their money in kind of more corrupt, evil, diabolical ways. And very early on, all these characters realize that the unicorn that Paul Rudd hit with his car, that the body has certain medicinal qualities that can like clear your acne or heal your eyes, or in the case of Richard E. Grant's character, cure his cancer. So of course, being a corrupt pharmaceutical CEO, he's going to try and exploit this and monetize it. However, the little baby unicorn has big, giant, monstrous parents who are big, scary monsters, and they go on the warpath trying to get the body of their little baby back. And the rest of the movie is basically like a madcap adventure of everybody running in terror as they're getting impaled on horns or their heads crushed under hooves and all that kind of stuff. All sorts of mayhem ensues. And ordinarily, I'm the world's biggest fan of horror, comedy, hybrids, but I will admit, it's a very tough genre to pull off, because well, some people will say if you're making a horror movie, it just needs to be a horror movie. If you're making a comedy, it needs to be a comedy. Like the tones will kind of clash. But there are examples, like an American Werewolf in London, where when it's funny, it's hysterical. And when it's terrifying and grotesque, it's just absolutely fucking awesome. So I'm not one of those purists that thinks that a genre needs to be kind of narrowly defined. As long as the emotion is working at that time and the style is working, well, then it's working. And you can take the movie in as many different tonal directions as you like. But I think because in this movie, because none of the ingredients seems to be working, it all feels like a big tonal clash, as opposed to this wonderful harmony of different tones and styles. And it's hard to think of a single ingredient that actually works well. I think what it boils down to is that every single character is so unlikable and so obnoxious that it makes it very tough to get invested in the movie in any way, shape, or form. So let's start with Jenna Ortega, who's obviously become a massive superstar in recent years. I first saw her in X, and I absolutely loved her in that. But obviously a lot of people really love her from the show Wednesday. It was an absolute sensation, a total social phenomenon on Netflix. But here she is just so goddamn annoying. Like, I don't know why writers always insert these characters into stories, but a 20-year-old undergrad art history major who spends the entire movie telling everybody why they're wrong, or why they're amoral, or why they're unethical. She's just completely, totally obnoxious. And she's the ultimate stereotype of, like, you know, the undergrad art history student with dyed hair and whatnot, who's constantly scolding everybody in the story. But obviously the scolding is directed toward the audience. We're all supposed to be kind of eating up her messages and all of her vaunted wisdom with the spoon. She's horrible in this. Love and adore Jenna Ortega. I want nothing but the best for her moving forward, and I think the sky's the limit as far as her opportunities are concerned. This movie just made her seem annoying as hell. But almost as annoying is Paul Rudd's character, and I think that might be the most remarkable achievement of this movie, is that they've turned one of the most likable, charismatic actors of the last 30 years into somebody that you don't like or can't root for. Like, I didn't even know that was possible. Everybody likes Paul Rudd. He's sweet, he's charming, he's funny. I mean, if you watch him in movies like Anchorman, he's hysterical. Or you watch him as Scott Lang in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, he's charming as hell. Everybody likes him. Or you watch him in movies like Clueless, 1,000 years ago, or one of the Halloween movies from back then. I can't remember which Halloween movie it was, but Paul Rudd is awesome. But here he is charmless. He's a weasel. He's cowardly. He's also just a total poussoir. And every interaction he has with his daughter, like, when will the unicorn rip his goddamn head off and, like, drop kick it into a canyon? Like, please kill this character as quickly as humanly possible. And the fact that we're supposed to be kind of invested in his reconciliation with his daughter, I found both of these characters to be unendurable, and they happen to be the stars of the movie. That's a big problem. And as far as the family that's at the core of this wealthy pharmaceutical empire is concerned, they're a little bit better, but not much. Like, Will Poulter plays the son of Téa Leoni and Richard E. Grant, and he's a recovering drug addict who wants to use all the family's ill-gotten gains and all of his various entrepreneurial activities. Will Poulter at least seems to be having fun with the role, even if it's a little one-dimensional and underwritten. Téa Leoni, I mean, if you watch a movie like Flirting with Disaster from the 1990s from, what the hell's that director's name? Totally blanking. David O. Russell. Sorry, I had to look it up real quick. But she's got comedic chops, and she's astonishingly beautiful. I'm a massive fan of Téa Leoni. She's just kind of vacant and spaced out in this. It's a little bit underwritten. And Richard E. Grant, I mean, he gave us one of the greatest comedic performances in the history of movies in Withnail and I. He has got chops, he's got talent, he's got it all.
Cake and fine wine.
If you don't leave, we'll call the police.
Balls. We want the finest wines available to humanity. We want them here, and we want them now.
And I grew up watching him in movies like The Player, but if you watch Withnail and I, it's one of the most quotable movies ever made in any era, in any country. It is just a savage performance. If you want to have comedy with bite and with edge and with teeth, there's no better actor alive than Richard E. Grant who can give it to you. But I think the problem is the writer-director of this movie, he's trying so hard to deliver his messages about corrupt pharmaceutical companies, he keeps kind of tripping over his own feet. And what he's overlooking is that if you really want to do a good job of kind of skewering corrupt, wealthy elites, part of your movie or your show needs to make them appear like it's a lifestyle that you actually might want. Like, take a show like Succession. Very critical of this incredibly powerful, wealthy family, but at the same time, you fall in love with all of them. You want to be around them. And so a movie or a show needs to depict evil people in a charismatic way so that we can kind of see things from their point of view. I think this movie is just a little bit too obvious and too blunt, too heavy-handed in its clear agenda in order to actually allow us to, like, laugh and have a good time. And as the movie got underway for like the first 30, 40 minutes, and it gave us all these kind of awkward pauses and kind of cringe comedy that wasn't quite comedy, but, well, like I said, mildly amusing, where I was kind of like lightly chuckling every now and then, but also kind of mildly annoyed by the proceedings. But I kept saying to myself, as soon as the monsters show up, all bets are off. It's just going to be an absolute fucking blast. But I have to admit, the best part of the movie is kind of the awkward comedy at the beginning as opposed to the more horrific ingredients. Because the monsters just look awful. Like, there's no getting around it. The special effects in this movie are fucking pathetic. And I just I couldn't get over the hump that the unicorns just look so terrible, because it's not even like the movie's trying to hide them in the shadows and kind of tease and suggest with like hooves or horns or whatever. You see them like full blown for like the great majority of the movie, and so you're just constantly examining their flaws and how ridiculous they look. And so yeah, if you're making a monster movie, first thing you got to do, the monster needs to work, it needs to be fucking awesome, otherwise the whole movie falls apart. But I think I've been critical enough of this movie. Let's talk about a few good qualities. At least A24 is taking a big swing on an original idea, a dark comedy with monsters that admittedly it doesn't work at all, but at least A24 is trying to make movies that the other big studios are very reluctant to make. And A24 is in this weird, awkward kind of like danger zone where they're trying to increase the size and scope and the commercial appeal of their movies. They raised a lot of money last year, and the budgets of the movies are going up. But I think the most challenging movies to make in the industry are the mid-range movies. You can make movies for a couple $1 million, like A24 has been doing since 2013 very successfully. Or you can make a big, giant, blockbuster popcorn roller coaster movies and hope that, like, you know, like your bet pays off and that whatever franchise you're developing is popular and it makes, you know, $1 billion. But the movies that cost like $30, $40, $50 million to make, those often are the most, I guess, face the biggest uphill battle because they can take a few risks, they can afford to. On the other hand, they do need to put a lot of butts in seats to justify their expense. And a great example of that would be Focus Features and the recent movie Nosferatu. But I think the budget was $50 million. And it did just fine, and Robert Eggers will make more movies with Focus Features, and you know his career's in very good shape. You can make a mid-range movie that resonates with an audience and is artistically satisfying and commercially successful. But that's definitely been the category of movies that has been most challenged in recent years. And A24 is very willfully and deliberately kind of leaning into that. But their slate for the rest of the year, I am excited. Hang on, I got take a quick glance. Boom, 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 boom. So Warfare, right around the corner, movie about the Iraq War, looks awesome. Legend of Oki is kind of a fantasy adventure movie with a little girl and a little monster, but it looks like it might be a nice innocent little fairy tale. Friendship looks hysterical, like mean-spirited, dark comedy. Bring Her Back, a horror movie that looks fucking balls to the walls from the people who made Talk to Her or Talk to Me. I think Talk to Her is the Pedro Almodovar. Talk to Me is the A24 horror movie. But anyway, Bring Her Back, cool looking horror movie. Materialists, like full-blown chick flick date movie, but in that we get so few rom-coms, and that movie actually might do extremely well. And then we've got Marty Supreme from one of the Safdie brothers. For whatever reason, the Safdie brothers have split up and they're making movies independently from each other. But I think the A24 slate for 2025 is very promising. They're off to a slow start with this and whatever that weird fucking horror musical Opus, which came out a couple weeks ago. In any event, I read some terrible reviews and I decided to take a pass on Opus, and it's losing just about every single dollar that was invested in it. So A24, once again, as your budgets go up, and you start taking bigger and bigger financial risks and bigger creative swings, like the stakes get incredibly high. But obviously A24, when it comes to brand loyalty, they have one of the most recognizable brands that's associated with quality in all of film and television right now. I hope they will survive this next phase, but obviously the first 10 years of A24 were just an absolute like great success. What they want to do, obviously, is more movies like Everything Everywhere All at Once, which grossed like $85 million, won a bunch of Oscars. Like you can tell, that's what A24 is reaching for, but it's hard to generate that kind of success each time at bat. If you're taking a lot of risks, then you must also wrestle with and grapple with failure. But one final compliment for A24. Even though I didn't really like the movie, and I definitely would not recommend that people drive to a theater and slap down money to watch it. That said, they did invest a little cash in an original hand-painted poster by the great Tony Stella. And I'm biased. I know Tony Stella. He's been kind enough to come on this channel, and I've recorded podcasts with him. Big fan of Tony, but even if I had never interacted with Tony ever, as kind of the keeper of the flame when it comes to preserving the art in the world of movie posters, Tony Stella's guy. He's been accumulating a pretty massive fan base over the last 10 years, and it's been a huge thrill watching his career go up, 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 and up, and his artistry going up, up, and up. And so I love his poster for Death of a Unicorn. I think the poster, they should have just released the poster and kept the movie in a vault and allowed us to imagine what might have been, but I can't be but so critical about any studio or production that's willing to hire Tony Stella to create a poster. I feel like every single movie out there needs a poster by Tony Stella, and I hope that people like A24 and Neon or Criterion, or kind of like these more art house brands that also have some commercial appeal, will continue to recognize that there is an audience that loves Tony's work, and there's an audience that will see a movie or buy a Blu-ray just from the Tony Stella art. The first podcast I ever did with Tony Stella, which was like 10 years ago, I was talking about how there are a lot of movies out there. Some of my all-time favorite movie posters, I've never actually seen the movie, but obviously I'm a big fan where you have a great movie that's matched with a great poster, like The Old Dark House, one of my favorite horror movies from the 1930s. Hall of Fame poster, Hall of Fame movie. But I think that's about all I have to say about Death of a Unicorn. It's an unfortunate miss when it comes to taking big creative swings, and I realize that I've been posting a ton of negative reviews on this channel lately. I don't mean to, or I don't intend to, but as I often say, if you're lucky, you get between like 5 and 10 good movies per year. And if you go to the movies a lot, that means mathematically, most of the movies you see are going to be underwhelming or disappointing. And I've been seeing anywhere between like 1 and 3 movies a week for like the last 2 months. So it's like, I don't know if all the best movies have yet to be released or we've already gotten past the good stuff, but I see a ton of movies. Inevitably, you're going to see a lot of crummy movies, and I'm off to see the latest David Ayer, Jason Statham movie this afternoon, Working Man, or A Working Man, or The Working Man. Anyway, it's an action movie. I hope it'll be good. If I'm going to the theater and slapping down money, I hope that every movie will be good, but it's just not mathematically possible. You get lucky every once in a while. And even though A24 has made a ton of incredible movies over the last like 12 years, unfortunately, Death of a Unicorn is just not one of them. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. I look forward to hearing your thoughts. But once again, A24 has an incredible slate for the rest of the year, so I'm sure A24 will give us some good stuff between now and the end of the year. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. Remember to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.